Next, let's talk about posability, the articulation. And I must stress that, again, these two are practically one and the same, although there is quite a few differences, but also similarities. Because these two are made of a much more, well, would you say, different, softer plastic compared to that of the original. There's quite a bit of similarities with that. But first, let's start with the jaw. On this one, I commented before that the jaw was loose. I fixed it. Yeah, I don't know why, but apparently I just now thought to do this. I took my fingers and I squeezed the jaw back into place, and so now I actually have an articulated jaw. The only trade-off is that it's really tight, and at a certain point it doesn't really open as far as like this guy's does. So it's more like the 2014's range of movement rather than the 2019's, but hey, at this point, who's going to argue? I have a movable jaw now that doesn't flop. Still no head movement because it's glued in. Still barely any neck movement. Again, mild wiggle, but that's literally all I can do. Here at the shoulders, we can actually go pretty much in and out, forward and back because they are on ball joints. So you can get a pretty fair amount of range with that. Doesn't feel like there's too much resistance. Although it does appear to be like a little bit of stuckage right there. Hinges for the elbows, but I've already commented why they will not turn because the hinges are not applied correctly, so they will not swivel. That's the shoulder swiveling, not the elbow. And the wrists are not on ball joints or hinges, but rather just basic swivel. So you do lose a bit of swivels with the elbow and the movement with the wrist, but it's all fine and dandy at the end of the day. Moving on down to the waist, here we have a all right swivel. It's not like so much range you're gonna get out of. You can go like that far left, that far right, and you can't really get so much up and down, side to side. I mean, I imagine if you push it, you probably would either one, break it, or two, unlock more of the articulation, but I'm not risking the biscuit. Here we have an articulated hip, so you can kind of slide that in and out, forward and back real nicely. It probably works the same as the other one does, like a barbell style sliding ball joint. We got some nice hinges for the knees, but much like the wrists, or sorry, the elbows, you cannot swivel them all that much. It looks like you can here, but trust me, you can actually on this one, I do believe, but it's very risky because you also run the risk of breaking the hinge itself. It's like to split apart. And a ball joint here at the ankle. And 10 segments for the tail. So very organic, soft movement. Although again, because of the way it's painted, you will see gaps. And it does kind of hold its pose, which is kind of shocking. It does droop a little bit, but I mean, that's kind of expected with these sort of tails. Now, something that version 3 has over version 2 is that it has way more head movement. It has the same type of joints, but the different plastic used, because it's translucent soft plastic, really one-ups both the original version and version 2. And I will even say this guy in a lot of ways, because for one, the jaw actually articulates like pretty flawlessly. There's no resistance to this thing whatsoever, but it's not like so overly loose. Here we have the head, which actually can go pretty far down, pretty far up, and can actually twist side to side and have a beautiful rotation. And the neck, this is what I mean by like, they really freed it up thanks to the addition of like the new plastic. Like you can get some pretty good rocker motion side to side, and it looks just overall really cool. And I could even get him to like rotate his head all the way to the side. Version 1 I think could do this, version 2 could not. Here we have the shoulders, so you can get a fair amount of range here. Pretty much the same thing as you would find on the other versions, except maybe a little more. Actual working hinges with swivels and a swivel hinge wrist, so you can actually rotate it. ball joints at the ab crunch, so you can kind of get a bit more of a crunch than you can with the original, and a much better fluid rotation, plus a bit of actual side to side. Nice rotations here at the hips. Again, same kind of application. You can kind of see more of that orange stuck in there. And you can actually get a pretty decent bend. It doesn't show it on a camera, but there you go. It almost feels like a ratchet, although I think it's just really tight. You can kind of get some nice rotation in there. And a pretty good ball joint at the foot, although again, it is really tight. And the thing that, in my opinion, really sells the articulation is the tail. Outright beautiful movement. And unlike the Evolution Godzilla, they actually bothered to paint within the sockets. So it looks for a seamless look, although there's a ton of seams, but you can get a lot more range than you would with something like the version 1 or 2. Even, I think, the 2014, even when its bendy wire comes nowhere close to this. Actually, maybe it does. That might be a bit of an overstatement, but still, like the translucent, softer plastic really helps. The only thing is that it doesn't really hold its pose when it's posed straight up, so you can kind of like get a little bit of a limpage, but it's still very fluid movement. And I gotta say, this like steals the show regardless. So when it comes to size, you can automatically tell that one's a bit bigger than the other. However, proportionally, they're the exact same. The reason why one appears taller than the other is because he is actually a reissue that had his legs modified, so the socket placement is a bit different, and he's able to stand up a little taller. And I know this because I've seen some photos online of the original, specifically the prototype, and he was like really hunched compared to this. Like this is how hunched the original was. This one actually has its legs modified, so hey, who's going to necessarily argue with that? But as you can see here, the head here is looking much more downward compared to this one because, again, broken right out of the gate. I had to glue it, so essentially as far as size goes, they're the exact same. Next, let's go to accessories, and version 3 comes with nothing. Now, ideally, yes, version 2 did come with the atomic blast, and I think it would have been hard to replicate the nuclear pulse. But come on, why not like a decapitated Ghidorah head to put in his mouth? Or why not like something related to Mothra? Like put the Mothra wings, like you can disattach maybe a dorsal fin and put on the big Mothra wings that replicate the pulse. If you see the Spiral Studios statue, you know what I'm talking about. But unfortunately, version 3 does not come with anything aside from translucent plastic, which you could argue that's a gimmick, but is it really? I'll let you decide for that. But this one, being a bootleg of the version 2, actually does come with a few accessories, specifically a heat ray and a bit of an impact base. And I've already covered this like several times, so I'm not going to cover it again. But basically, the TLDR is this thing looks like a pink Q-tip, and this looks like an umbrella. There you go. Next, let's go over price. And I gotta say, it's pretty close, because retail price, there's really no retail price for him because he's a bootleg, and I bought him from AliExpress, and I paid like $20 for this thing before shipping. Around there. And I can't remember how much I paid for you. Maybe about $30 before taxes. Again, I can't exactly remember. But what I can say is that this guy is showing up practically like at a bunch of different prices. And an MSRP, even though he is discontinued, was about $20 to $25 before taxes. So really, the price, if you can find him cheaper than him for whatever reason, I guess there you go. Next, I want to talk about availability. And this is actually where I want to bring an interesting point about him. See, he, again, like I said, is flooding AliExpress and eBay. Those are literally where you can find so many versions of this thing. I own one of the other versions without like the pink veins and whatnot, but I know that there's another one out there that has the pink veins, and there's a ton of different box styles you can choose from, like with the red box, the one that looks like him except it has the higher toys promo art. There's just a ton of different variants of this thing floating around, so and that ultimately leads to like different manufacturers and quality control, if there even is some for bootlegs like this. You might say, oh, there's no way to buy this thing aside from retail, right? Or sorry, outside of retail, right? As far as marketplace goes, right? Like secondhand marketplace stores. Hold the phone. Look in the link in the description. There is a website called costumes.com that's still selling this thing for $34.99. I don't know how much stock they have left, but it's probably low. So this is your chance to get one that's not a bootleg, unless you really want that beam. But that being said, that's literally the last remaining place, I believe, one of the last remaining, that actually sells for retail. So buy it if you want. And lastly, I want to talk about packaging, and I have the V3 box out here, but because both of them share like the same type of box, there's really not much to compare, although I have heard from reviews on AliExpress that this thing is not zip tied or packaged properly. And I mean, it's probably my fault for not like getting the box with it, but because of like how this is all bent up and this is all bent up and how this guy's head came snapped right out of the box, despite the fact that there was no box, it's subjective as to how it's protected. So, again, I gotta give the edge to him, but really, it's all up to you. And so, that brings us to the end of this figure comparison. At the end of the day, I definitely think that as far as like money's worth, you're getting more quality with the NECA release. Although, if you do want some accessories, then I mean, you're just better off going with the version 2 of this guy. For resale, it's like about 30 to 50 bucks. 60 maybe at best. Assuming that they're not scalpers. Anywhere past that, you're greedy. Sorry. But really, it's all up to you. If you want something that'll actually that actually is official, go with him. If you want something that's like a what if scenario if NECA had continued the license, go with him. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. Believe in Jesus, accept him as Lord and Savior today. Spread the gospel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.